Hey, it's Mark Ewell. I'm going to show you how to build your list of agents to call using the Matrix MLS for a new development project or for any listing. So we're starting here in Matrix. Go to search, and what I'm going to look for is all of the new construction statuses, and I'll show you why. First, I'm going to put in, we're going to go sold. I'm going to pull this all the way back to middle of 2022, which is kind of when things changed around here. We'll go through the end of last year. You can see that's giving me over 5,000 matches. That's literally just everything. So obviously way too big. We're going to go down to here. And for the construction statuses, there's a few. Everything should be either existing home or new construction, but it isn't. And it isn't because agents are lazy. And so they end up closing out stuff in statuses that haven't been changed to new construction yet. But if you look at new construction, you can see down here 2,800 matches. That should be all that's there. But in pre-sold, we've got another 100. In to be built, 204. Tell me how you close out a house that's to be built, hasn't been built yet. These are obviously incorrect. And of course, the big one, under construction, 1,700 results in there. So that's somebody who put a listing in the MLS when it was under construction, got it under contract, got it sold, and then when they went to close it out in MLS, they did not update it to new construction. They left it as under construction and closed it out. So we have to use all of these. You can hold down the control key if you don't know that to select all of those. And now you can see we got 4,800 matches. Obviously, that's way too many for us to work with, but that's going to get us into the map, and we'll go from there. I'm going to pretend that I'm working on a new development project on the east side of Colorado Springs. So we'll go over here to the map. And you're going to have to know your own area, of course, right? You'll have to know, hey, if this part of the city is where I'm building in, I want to look at this part of the city for where people are selling. In reality, Colorado Springs is a small enough market. If somebody sold a new home over here, they'd probably be willing to sell a new home over here. But in order to try to dial in, what I'm looking for is the people who are most actively selling new homes in the area where I'm going to be working, right? That doesn't mean I won't pick up other agents, but I'm going to be really trying to get to the top ones, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So we'll kind of scroll up here. You can see this will keep kind of populating in, and I'm going to go for everything east of Powers and up to maybe including Meridian Ranch out here. So let's say there. So come across here. We'll go up Highway 24, stay on this side. There's Meridian Ranch. There's Wolf Ranch, Cordera, and down to here. So you can see that narrows me down to 2,600. That's still a lot. That's going to be too many. What you end up looking for is probably 500 to 1,000. And I'll show you how I get to that. But that's what you're going to end up wanting. If it's less than 500, broaden your scope. If it's more than 1,000, you're going to tighten it up. Where obviously 2,500 is way too many. So now we're going to go back to our criteria, and we're going to narrow it down a little bit. Let's say I'm selling a mid-priced project. So I'm going to dial up that pricing a little bit. We'll say it's 400 to 600, right? People who are only selling like, the $300,000 stuff, of which there's not very much. Or maybe they're selling, primarily, bigger, more expensive homes in the newer, nicer areas. Those might not be the target market for me, for my particular, made up project. So I'm going to say 400 to 600, and then it's a single family project. So I'm going to focus on single family. That gets me down to 1,250. And I'll just throw on here 3 to 5 bedrooms. And that gets me down to about 1,100 matches. That'll be just about perfect, and I'll show you why. So now we're going to go to results. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete some of these just so I can show you how I get them. So, because I've built in kind of some standard stuff on new construction, because I do a lot of new construction, but we'll just delete those. changes. So you're starting with your standard single line thing. First thing you'll do is go here to manage display. I'm going to save a copy. And then I'm going to go here to manage display. I'm going to change the name of it. Instead of copy of single line, we'll call this EXP new dev. Save changes. Remind me to come back and save changes again after I get these columns built. So we'll go right here and click. That's a left click, insert column. We're just going to do the bare minimum stuff that we need. So we could do builder model, builder name, builder model. We don't need those for this, but they're easy to add. Builder name, builder model. What we really need is the buyer agent's info. So this is a quirk I've noticed, and I don't know if this is just our PPAR, PPMLS matrix, or if it is everywhere. But if you put in buyer agent, all you get is co-buyer agents. The buyer's agent and ours goes in as the selling agent, not to be confused, of course, with the listing agent, right? So selling agent is what I'm looking for, and I want to start with their NRDS ID. That is probably the best way to do it. You could use a salesman ID if you prefer that, or if your MLS doesn't list NRDS IDs, I prefer NRDS, but it really doesn't matter as long as you use an ID. So either NRDS or a salesman ID, or whatever their a unique ID number, not just their name. You need some sort of unique ID number there. So we'll get that. Then going to add, now I want their name, selling agent name, and might as well grab their phone number. Might not be accurate, but it will at least be something. Do I want their brokerage? I might get the brokerage. I might not care. I'm probably going to look them up anyway. So this is enough information. That's what I need. Go back to here, save the changes on my EXP new dev display. Now I've got 1135. I know that's a quantity that I can export. I think the max is 1500, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to check all right here. If you check too many and you go down to export and it's grayed out, then that tells you you've got too many. What do you do in that case? I'm just going to show you real quick. I don't have to do it on this one. I'll go ahead and select none again. Then I'm going to go back to my criteria and I'll change the dates. So this is a big date range. It's like 3.5 years. So first thing I could do is just tighten it up and say, man, I don't need to go back to July of 2022. That's like 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years ago. I'll go back to January 1st of 2023. And that'll probably tighten up the data set enough that I could get it to export. But if I needed the whole data set and wouldn't export it, then I would just break it up into blocks. So I'd say, okay, the first one I'm going to do is July 1st of 2022 to December 31st of 2023. And I'll see if that's a small enough number that I can export it. And then I'll export it, and then I'll go back and I'll just change the dates again. Okay, so now from January 1st of 2024 to December 31st of 2025. As that splits it up into 2 blocks, I end up saving it as 2 separate export files, and then I can combine them together myself in Excel, which is easy. But in this case, I don't have to mess with that, but that's where you would mess with it if you needed a smaller data set. But you still wanted all of them, right? The easiest thing to do, if it was big enough, you thought this was the right criteria, 400 to 600, 3 to 5, and the other stuff you got in here, the map is right, then just tighten up that. Say, I don't need 3.5 years of data, maybe 2 years of data is plenty. But it might be better to, change your geography rather than to change your dates. It's good to have enough people to work with. Anyway, we're going to go to here. I'm going to check them all. And I probably have to pause here for a moment because I think I have somebody walking in to talk to me. So I'm going to have to cut this out of the video and come back in a second. Okay, so we're going to export this data set. So I've selected everything by checking all 1,135 are checked. Go ahead and hit export. I definitely want to use the columns that I just built. Click export. Yeah, that's fine. Save it. All right. Now, next step is to get into Excel. I'll show you what to do next. So I'm going to have to stop presenting here and then come. Okay, we've got the exported file from Excel opened up here. All I've done is just open it up. First thing it's going to want to tell you is, hey, could you possibly save this as an Excel file instead of a CSV? So we're going to do that. Save as. There we go. And then we have to say, no, I don't want it in OneDrive. I want it somewhere I can actually find it again later. Can I please put it in the same drive I had it in before? Thank you. Now we're going to go through and we're going to delete a lot of these columns. You could, of course, do this in your on the MLS site, export pure columns. It really doesn't matter. They're easy. I'm going to leave the MLS number because that gives each entry a unique ID. We're going to delete basically all of this stuff across here. Don't care, don't need it, and it's just going to end up being more stuff for ChatGPT to mess with later, which I don't need. So all of that stuff is gone. Now, the selling agent NRDS ID, their name, and their phone number, and the unique MLS ID for each transaction is all I've got left. So we can go through here and see a couple of things without even doing any other work. And first of all, I see a lot of non-members pop up. That's when the listing agent is closing it out and can't find the selling agent in MLS for whatever reason. They may be a member of a different MLS or just not in PPMLS, or the listing agent was lazy. Could be a variety of things. So a lot of non-members, and you can see there's already a couple names you could probably spot more than once on here. But the first thing we're going to do, just to give us a little something to look at, is we're going to go to Data, Sort. Make sure you have that checked. My data has headers, which tells it, hey, we're going to use that top row as titles. And we're going to sort everything by selling agent NRDS ID. All right, so now we can scroll through and start to see some patterns, right? So you can see a lot of single entries. This guy is on here a couple of times. There's Mike McGuire, Susan Shields are on there a few times. Ben Dice. One thing you need to do if you are going to be successful in new development sales as a listing agent is getting to know who these people are. Who are these people that are on here a bunch of times? Ben has been selling new homes in Colorado Springs longer than I've been in the business. I started the new home business in April of 2013, and he's been a very successful buyer's agent for much longer than that. He does buyers and listings, but when his buyers, he sells a lot of new homes. He always has. So you can see he's on here 7 times. He's a guy I definitely want to call if I've got a new project. Doesn't matter where it is, because he'll tell me, his direct opinion on it, and that'll be useful to me. I'm Holly Quinn. These are people that I know that you should know. Here's another potential pitfall, and you're going to want to sort this out before you start making calls. Javier on here 4 times or 5. Javier is a listing agent for a builder. So when he's showing up here as a buyer agent, what this means is that when he was closing out a transaction at MLS for a buyer that worked directly with him that didn't have their own agent, he put himself in as the buyer's agent as well as the listing agent. He's not really the buyer's agent. He's representing the seller. He's treating the buyer as a customer. If you've listened to my other stuff, you know about that. But in MLS, he's given himself credit for both the buy side and the sell side. So I do not need to call Javier to tell him about my new project. He's probably going to know anyway, because Javier is good at his job and keeps up with what's going on in the market, but he's certainly not going to be bringing me any buyers. Amy Martinez. These are all people, again, I know because this is my market. Whoever these people are for your market, you need to know. You need to know them by name. You need to have them in your phone. And what you're going to do right now is figure out who you need to call and call them to make those introductions. It's pretty easy just to scroll through here and see a few, but we're going to do something better than that. So I'm going to Save that if I didn't already. And then I'm going to stop presenting. Okay, so now we're going to get into everyone's favorite, ChatGPT. I'm going to provide you this prompt that you can just paste right in. I've already got it copied. I'm going to paste it into here. Then I'm going to dump in the Excel file that I cleaned up. So there's the Excel file, again, not the original CSV, but the XLS file that I deleted all those extraneous columns from. There's the prompt, and go. And as this works, and it won't take long because there really isn't that much to it. You notice I always start telling ChatGPT who it is, what is its role in this job, and then I give it as much background information as I need, and then finally tell it exactly what I want. And it's given me an Excel file, which I'm going to download. I'm going to call this exp new dev output. All right, okay, so this is the Excel file that ChatGPT gave me. One thing I noticed is that I forgot to delete out the non-members from the file before I send it to ChatGPT. That could have saved me whatever that number of rows is, doesn't really matter. I'm just going to delete them now. So we'll start by deleting the non-member off of here. Gone. Now, there's a couple more names on here that I recognize. So first of all, Matt works for another builder. Same thing as when I mentioned Javier earlier. His name is on here as buyer agent because he sold a home to a buyer that wasn't represented by their own agent, and he put himself in as the buyer's agent as well as the listing agent. He wasn't really the buyer's agent, and he's not bringing me buyers, so I'm going to delete him off. Javier's down here somewhere. I'll delete him. And I'll go through and check the other ones, see if there's any other names I recognize as builder reps, or if there's any names I don't recognize, I will look them up before I call them. I just want to see what kind of volume are they doing? What kind of agent are they? There are people on here who run teams, and they close out all their team's business under their own name. Those are still useful people for me to talk to, but it means that when I call them, I'm not going to say, hey, I saw that you closed, 3 transactions over here in such a place and 2 over there. That team leader may not know what I'm talking about, especially when we're talking about, a 3.5 year time horizon and a very large team that does a lot of business. All I'm really saying is, hey, I saw, your team members closed, 6 or 8 or whatever it is, new transactions, new build transactions in this time frame. They're not going to recognize that. So knowing which of these people are team leaders that close everything out in their own name versus actual, independent agents that are closing things out themselves, or they're on a team, but their team leader lets them close their own stuff under their own name. That's, information I need to know before I start making those calls. So there's still a little bit more research left to do, but this is a pretty good list. And you can see, remember, we started with 1,135, I think, names on the list. It was over 1,100 and something. And we're down to 32. And there's probably still a couple more in here I'm going to end up deleting off for one reason or another. So, but 32 names, if I had a launch of a new project that was happening next month, I could get to 32 names in a week. I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to call them, introduce myself if they don't know me, tell them about the project I'm representing, have a quick conversation, follow it up with an email that has that informational packet, and get on to the next one. If we're doing a broker open, I want to invite them to the broker open. If I don't reach them by phone, I'll send them a text. If I don't reach them by text, I'll send them an email. I'm going to send them an email anyway, but I'd love to get that first phone conversation to just establish who I am, what I'm doing, and what we're offering so they can start thinking about their buyers. Anyway, that's how to build the list. By the way, you can do this, and I do, for any regular listing as well. You pop up a listing in a neighborhood, go look back over the last 6 months or a year and see who are the agents that were selling in that neighborhood and give them a call. If there's somebody that sold, in a particular community that you can define, and you can pull up that list and you see there's an agent that sold 2 or 3 homes in that neighborhood over the last year, you want to call them when you get that listing, right? Because if they sold 2 or 3 last year, they might sell 2 or 3 this year, and you want them to know about yours. So this is a tip that you can use for your traditional resale market as well as when you're opening a new project on the new development side. It's really easy to do in Matrix. I've used other MLSs. They're all different, but I think Matrix is pretty popular, so that's what I'm going to show. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, mark@maximumelevation.com. Wish you the best in your new development journey.